Last week when we met, we talked a little bit about just defining neurodivergence versus neurotypical and kind of the medical model and the social model and things like that. So when we talk about neurodivergence, we're talking about anyone whose brain function is not specifically equipped for the society that we live in. The society around us is not designed to support the way that we process or the way that we best interact with others and with stimulus and that sort of thing. Neurotypical individuals experience the world really differently because it is designed to accommodate the way that their brain processes information and to support their needs as they show up. So we went through last week a few different thoughts and requests on things that we may want to talk about over this course of Unmasked, and looking at some of the themes that were showing up in those, and then also themes that have shown up in my own experience over the last week or so. Wanted to speak a little bit today about the way that stress responses show up for neurodivergent individuals, because sometimes it's the same and sometimes it's not at all. I am participating myself in a therapy group on Tuesday nights, and so had it last night, and as many of us that have participated in such groups before woke up in therapy hangover this morning, and still kind of processing through. And one of the things that came from that group that really kind of inspired some of what I wanted to bring into Unmasked today was the idea about appeasement as a fawn response, not just caretaking as a fawn response, but truly shifting self and shifting personality. I've had several conversations over the years that I've been with my husband where we've left an event or we have been with a particular group, whether that's family or a friend group or whatnot, and he's made comments about how you are like not the same person when we hang out with those people as when we're at home or when we hang out with other people. And I had a lot of shame around that for a long time because it's not something that I recognized about myself. I just was being present there. And what I've come to understand about that is it is a mirroring response that shows up often as a stress response for overstimulated neurodivergent people. So I wanted to go into expanding on that a little bit more today, and looking at it from all of the different directions of stress response. So when we talk about stress response in general, we're talking about when our nervous system perceives some type of threat, some type of discomfort. We react in fight or flight, which are active states. They raise us into some sort of activity. Or freeze and fawn, which are less active or immobilizing states, and they bring us down out of activity, or out of our own activity and into that of someone or some place else. In your standard fight or flight response, when you think about, the images that we've used for this, even here at the Healing Collective, have been like the lion that growls and attacks, or the rabbit that just really rapidly takes off and gets out of the situation. They tend to look different for neurodivergent individuals, especially those of us who are used to masking to try to adapt to the environment around us. Ultimately, what is a nervous system fight response trying to do? It's trying to overpower something, right? If this is a threat and it's uncomfortable, then I'm going to overpower it in some way. The hard thing about that for neurodivergent individuals is where for neurotypical folks, that's often external. I'm going to overpower you. For neurodivergent individuals, it often gets internalized as a way to not because rejection sensitivity is very present as a way to not experience rejection that goes along with stress response, it becomes internalized. So rather than fighting outside, it starts with fighting inside. It starts with a ramp up of the inner critic voice. Why did you do it like that? You're such an idiot. You could have done that way better. You know better than that. It starts internally with more of a shame spiral of what's wrong with me? Why do I keep doing that? And it internalizes the anger of the fight response towards myself. And so what that comes out looking like oftentimes is rigid control of things. If you've ever, this comes up with toddlers, but it comes up a lot with my neurodivergent daughter as well. Very particular preferences on what color we are wearing, what length of sleeve we have today, what height of sock we have today, what type of plate material we're eating off of this morning. Rigid control as an attempt to move some of the internal energy. Because when you think about overpowering, that's pushing on something, right? I'm pushing back at it. But if what's happening is internal for me, I don't know where to push. So it shows up as defensiveness and perfectionism because I'm pushing on myself. And ultimately, that has nowhere to go. So it builds and builds and builds until we get the stereotypical neurodivergent meltdown, right? Where I cannot hold it anymore and it's just volcanoes. I have 100% been the volcanoer and been volcanoed on, and neither direction feels good. Neither one. But when my response to my internal shame spiral of what is wrong with me is rigid control and perfection to try to make it right, and I still can't do that, and it just fuels that push, push, push even more, has nowhere to go but out at some point. So it may not look like, at least at the beginning, it may not start out looking like direct argument or direct aggression, because for someone with rejection sensitivity, it goes internal first to try to avoid that rejection. Looking towards a flight response, what's the overall purpose of that? It's to get away from something, right? It's something has been perceived as not good for me, and I need to flee it. And I also still, as a neurodivergent person, don't want to be perceived as different, as dumb, as scared, as any of the things that I've been labeled that I'm trying to resist. So my flight response, again, turns internal. It turns into something like hyperindependence. I'm going to do it myself to a fault, which is incredibly hard to do as a neurodivergent individual, knowing, especially in recovery, knowing that connection is the path to healthy self. And my nervous system's telling me to be hyper independent. It just directly butts heads. It's also really hard to be on the other side of it when you are in relationship with someone and working on building partnership and togetherness with someone whose nervous system is telling them to stay independent. When you're trying to support somebody whose nervous system is responding to your support as a threat. Flight can also look like overachieving and productivity. How often, even just in this group, have we talked to others whose neurodivergent experience was, I just was good at stuff, and so I didn't have to worry about it. until it came to like the peopling. So if I can't do the peopling well, I can get away from that by achievement, by having so much other stuff that I'm good at that doesn't matter as much, by staying busy in ADSing and always doing shit so that I don't have time to engage, um, and thereby avoid conflict or disagreement. One that that shows up personally for me a lot is researching. When I am in a flight response and I need to get away from something, a lot of times when my nervous system goes into flight, it's because of my imposter syndrome. It's because of my fear that something about me is not good enough or I don't know enough. And so my flight response sends me into research. It sends me into, I'm going to read every single book about this. I'm going to read every single article about this. I'm going to know everything there is to know about this, and never be able to get caught off guard by anything surrounding it because my research has been thorough. But really, that is a flight response to my nervous system perceiving the discomfort of fear, of inadequacy, of imposter syndrome. So when we are in those active responses and we are not experiencing any relief to the nervous system, our nervous system oftentimes goes from one extreme to the other, and it goes from fight and flight to freeze and fawn, which is the shutdown. So what are we really trying to do with freeze? We're trying to block it out, right? I can't process anymore. I can't take anything else in. So I'm just in shutdown. I'm in decision paralysis. For those of us in the room who are in relationship with someone with neurodivergence, how many times a day do you speak to them and they have no idea you're speaking? How many times or what strategies do you have to use in order to pull them back from the zone out in order to actually engage? The zone out is a freeze response. It's a response that says too much, I'm blocking it out. The too much may be too many feelings. It may be too much sensory input. I'm overloaded. I cannot overpower it away and I can't run from it. So I'm just going to block it all out. For a neurodivergent person who is high masking, that might look like somebody who's typically pretty successful at work, or a kid who, for the most part, does fine at school. A shutdown might get them described as quiet or as easygoing or low maintenance. None of those mean that that person didn't have needs. It just means that they existed in shutdown, which didn't allow the needs to be known or supported by anyone, including themselves. I personally did not get the flavor of neurodivergence that goes towards shutdown very often. And my neurodivergent daughter, I don't think, got any sprinkles of that at all. That's just the flavors that live over here. And then we have fawn. And fawn is really a big one that I wanted to talk about today because it is the most common stress response for neurodivergent individuals. In a fawn response, our nervous system is telling us that I need to avoid rejection by keeping others happy or fitting in. I need to appeal to it. I need to disarm this threat by making myself seem more appealing. That's where masking comes in. My sensory needs are make me feel different, make me feel like I stand out, make me feel like there's something wrong with me. So I'm going to mask and I'm going to pretend they're not there in order to make myself more appealing to those around me or less off-putting to those around me, less difficult to those around me. But that doesn't mean that my body isn't still holding that discomfort. And without a path to be able to discharge it, where does it go? It just fuels masking and masking and holding and masking and holding and getting further and further from self, to a point where some folks that live in chronic masking aren't really sure what self is anymore. The response that I was talking about earlier, that my husband has called me out on a few times, that did put me in some shame spirals for a while, is called mirroring. For neurodivergent individuals who are hypervigilant, noticing everything around them, processing everything around them, one type of masking that can become really fluent is mirroring the personality or the preferences or the traits of someone else in order to make myself fit better. Being a chameleon. If this group of people prefers, if they love Thai food, today I love Thai food too. If they love burgers, today I love burgers too. If they love Italian, today I love Italian too. Taking on traits of those around me in order to decrease the potential for there to be an experience of conflict or for there to be a rejection of me or something I did. This also looks like minimizing yourself or shrinking. For those of us with relationships with neurodivergent people, are you familiar with the nervous laugh? Does that one come out for your loved ones? The where it's not really a laugh. It's I don't even really know how to describe it. It's a fawn response. It's a, I know I'm supposed to laugh here, but I don't know what's happening in my nervous system and I'm not sure what's funny, but I'll go ahead because everyone else is laughing. So I'm supposed to mirror it and make, yeah, sure. I find in my fawn response often when I take the steps to tune into my body and into the space that I'm in, I often find myself physically shrinking in my space as well, balling up, pulling my legs up and sitting with in some sort of pretzel variation, leaning forward or hunching over, putting my physical self in a space that is perceived as smaller, less threatening, less demanding of space, time, and attention. Just overall shrinking and becoming a yes man. Do you want to go do that? Yeah, sure. Do you want to ride a roller coaster today? Absolutely. No, I hate roller coasters. I do not want to ride a roller coaster today. But how many times have I done it when I'm in a fawn response? Because I'm afraid that if I don't, then I've just lost those relationships. So fight, when my body is trying to push something away, flight, when my nervous system thinks it needs to outrun something, freeze, when there is a complete system shutdown in order to protect me, and fawn, when I am going to make myself look better or more appealing to avoid rejection. They're hard enough when the environment around us and the standards of social interaction and relationship are created to support brain function. And they're really hard when they're partnered with masking and a fear of rejection that makes them turn inward rather than be experienced outward. And when neurodivergent folks have a hard time already with understanding or recognizing what's happening internally, it exponentially increases the difficulty of figuring out what to do next. So we like to offer a tool around our topic for the day, and this is such an interesting topic to offer tools around, because the majority of the standard accepted nervous system self-regulation tools that you can Google, how do I regulate myself, or what is a mindfulness, or all of those things. The majority of those are created for neurotypical individuals by neurotypical individuals and have the potential to be really dysregulating for neurodivergent nervous systems. If you have ever been someone or seen someone neurodivergent try to do a meditation, you probably know what I mean by that. If you haven't, and you just imagine asking your neurodivergent loved one to sit still and be quiet and meditate in their own mind for 5 minutes, it doesn't go well. It's not accessible. And a lot of the strategies for self-regulation aren't, because it's not one size fits all. Because nervous systems are not one size fits all, because they're controlled by our stress responses and by the amygdala in our brain that's responding to discomfort and threat. And each of us have a different association to what discomfort and threat is for us. Things that I might experience as threatening or uncomfortable might not be the same for you. Therefore, the tools and strategies that work for me very likely are different than the ones that work for you. So just slapping a generic, here are your coping skills, sticker onto something doesn't support neurodivergent brains in actually regulating what's happening in their nervous systems, especially when interoception, or that sense of awareness of internal states, is low. And that just makes it even harder. So the reason I went back and the end of, what do you even call that first part? The end of the talking? And kind of recapped what each of those responses are, is because what the message is our nervous system is trying to communicate by the response dictates what we need for regulation. So I guess if I wanted to simplify it, we could say that's the tool, would be decode what the message is your nervous system is trying to share. Is your nervous system telling you to push away? Is it telling you to run, to escape? Is it telling you that it's overloaded, there's too much, and we need to shut down? Is it telling you that you might not be approved of, or you might not fit in, so we avoid rejection by making myself seem more like or more appealing to the people around me? Depending on what the message is that the nervous system is trying to share, it shifts what our approach might be. So for a nervous system that's trying to push something away, if that's the message it's communicating, then its need is to safely access, control, and discharge energy, right? So how do I safely access, control, and discharge energy? If I think about the stereotypical picture of fight, like boxing gloves, fists up, ready to go, what does that accomplish? Proprioceptive input. For many people who are neurodivergent, there's some degree of proprioceptive dysregulation, and or proprioceptive input becomes a really regulating tool. When there's a fight response and the need is to discharge with control and safety, deep pressure can really support that. Not necessarily the weighted blanket deep pressure, because if I'm angry and wanting to go at something and you put me under a weighted blanket, I'm probably going to get angrier. But things like pressing palms, push-ups on the wall that put pressure on joints, tense up muscles and release, wringing out a dish rag. Or even one that I was talking about with someone yesterday that my son and I found on Amazon. It's called a Damn It doll. And it is literally a rag doll that you take by the foot and slam on things. And it's got a cute little rhyme on it about how when you're slamming it, you're supposed to say, damn it, damn it, damn it. And so then you have to have a conversation with your 10-year-old about whether or not that's okay, and under what circumstances. But the idea of that isometric discharge for proprioceptive input is there, because proprioceptive sense is what orients us to our body and allows us to feel grounded. Allowing there to be pressure on the joints or heavy work reconnects us with a sense of being grounded. Another tool that can be really supportive is cold. And that's just a straight chemical reaction kind of thing, right? If you think about what's happening in your body, even if your fight response is internalized, if I'm deep in a shame spiral, my heart's probably beating pretty fast. My breathing is probably uneven. I'm probably feeling jittery. Hands may be clammy or sweaty. All of those things are things that are moving energy in our body and creating friction, which creates heat. I apply cold to that and it counteracts it. So that can be the tool of holding ice that we hear sometimes. That could also just be a fan. I recognize now that when I was a waitress growing up, and I used to get really angry at the way I was treated by patrons of the restaurant I worked at, I would go stand in the walk-in freezer for a while. And I recognize now that I was calming my nervous system with cold. Another tool to help discharge but also add control is reducing sensory input. Adding in something like headphones or dimming lights so things are not quite as glaring. Moving from big light to lamp light, although who uses a big light? Truthfully. Could even be just moving from one environment, from a bedroom to a living room, from inside to outside, shifting the sensory input that's coming toward my body to allow me to reorient and shift what's happening for myself. If I'm in a flight response and my nervous system is trying to tell me to get away from something, to regulate it, I probably need to slow down. Now, if your loved one with neurodivergence is anything like mine, saying slow down or calm down is going to shoot us out of flight and into fight all day long. But moving it into a body-based slowdown rather than a brain-based slowdown helps with the regulation to bring all of it back. This is the place where something like rhythmic movement comes in. This is where rocking can support. This is where swinging on the swing set can support. Even just sitting at your desk and tapping a steady rhythm with your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Putting that predictable rhythmic repetition in place slows down, allows me to slow down, and it gives me something I can control the slowdown of as well. I can purposefully and intentionally slow down my taps and bring my whole self with it as I go. This is a place where if you've ever participated in something like EFT tapping or EMDR, this is a place where bilateral stimulation or BLS can support. That might look like just walking and counting steps. I'm going to count to 100 while I walk. That could look like, certainly I have a rock over here somewhere. There we go. That might look like just, oh, no, my drink's in front of me. Moving something from hand to hand, but bringing it side to side. It could look like tapping on my hips or my knees back and forth. It doesn't have to look like I'm doing EMDR in my car to myself, but allowing some of that stimulation that moves back and forth to bring my nervous system back down and slow things. One of the best tools that we have for slowing down is our breath, and specifically a long exhale. And some of you may have heard me talk about this before. When we're trying to get away from something, when I'm trying to outrun something, even if I'm doing that internally and it is in a flight response that looks more like hyperindependence or productivity, if I take control of my breathing rather than allow it to continue its natural rapid pace that helps the oxygen flow fuel what I'm doing, breathing in and then making my exhale longer than my inhale. Don't have to fiddle with any of the box breathings or the specific counts or anything like that. They're less important. What the most important thing is having the exhale take a really long time, because that's a cue to our nervous system that the threat is past. If I have time to exhale slowly, it's a cue that I'm no longer trying to outrun something. When we think about freeze, it's kind of on the opposite end of the stress response spectrum from fight. So where in fight we may counteract with cold, in freeze we may counteract with warm. Our system is shutting down to protect us, so it needs some support with a slow wake up. Maybe that's a hot drink. Maybe it is a heating pad. Maybe it is a shower. Micro movements is another one that I love for reorienting from freeze. Because the idea when the nervous system has been in freeze of even just like getting up and walking from the couch to the refrigerator can feel really insurmountable. But it's a lot easier to get there if I can start with just like moving my toes. The rest of me doesn't have to go anywhere yet. I can start with just moving my toes. And then I can move to just my lower leg and allow my body to reintegrate with itself slowly, allow myself to become more embodied without it feeling like a jolt to the system. Another one that supports with freeze is sensory input that does not require language processing. When I am in freeze, when my daughter is zoned out and it's taken me 5 times of saying something for her to even realize I'm in the room with her, much less talking, any sort of input that requires her to process either what she's looking at or hearing with language in order to respond, not going anywhere. However, if the input there to bring her back into space is something like a strong flavor, mint, sour candy, or a strong smell. I talked about being in my own therapy group last night, and we used an essential oil in it. And I was furious for the rest of the night because the smell of that thing was so strong. And no matter how many times I washed, I couldn't get it off. Textured objects, specifically ones that have a little bit of grit to them, a sandpaper texture or something pointy, something that doesn't necessarily make me want to rub it gently or go back to sleep. In a fawn response, when I have worked to make myself fit into a space that I didn't originally fit in, if I have tried to like put my round peg in the square hole kind of thing, one of the easiest first steps is to just take up space. Allow myself space. Allow myself to experience what it feels like in my body to not be pretzeled, to not be closed. There's something that feels innately vulnerable about taking up space. Self-contact is another one that can support a lot with fawn. And that might look like hand over heart. I like to do that one with some pressure to it. A little bit of proprioceptive input there too. But it could also look like self-hug, squeezing, any number of things. Scratching, leg scratching. But self-contact to help orient me back to now. Because if my nervous system is saying, adapt yourself to be more like something else, then my counter response is to reorient to what is true to me. Reminders that it's okay for me to pause before responding, that I don't have to respond with an immediate yes. The answer doesn't have to always be yes. One of the hardest things I've had to tackle for myself in my own recovery has been the recognition that just because I am good at something or can do it well doesn't mean I have to or to have to be the one to. And then reminders of choice. Those can be visual reminders, like little sticky notes. Those could even just be symbols, like the and symbol, that I can say no, I can ask for time, and my needs matter. That whatever is coming in from outside doesn't have to overtake what is happening for me, and my needs are just as valid. So as you take on the week to come, hopefully some of these tools can be supportive in noticing what's happening and deciphering what the nervous system message is, whether that's for you or whether it's something that you can offer some support with for your loved one, and do together. It's always going to go better to co-regulate it and do it together than it is to point the finger and say, you should do this.